Sharing live stream. And we're live yet, Carol?
Yeah, it says we're live.
It says we're live?
Yeah, on my end it does.
All right, yes, and we're live. Welcome Roundup, where you have your beloved Carol and Terry show today. Happy Friday, everybody. So what's yoga world? Am I frozen?
You're going in and out. We're gonna make it work. Okay. Yeah.
It's been for me, it's been or something's going on with my internet. So anyway, so what's going on? Of course, lots going on in the world. And one thing in particular we want to talk about today in terms of the chat, the feed several days ago about what's going on with whatever you call it, work trade, karma cleaners. What its kind of legal classification is almost as like an internship. And what's going on with that? Because recently, particularly in California, down on what constitutes an internship, i.e. karma yogi, anything you choose to call it. And there's very strict criteria or some criteria, a real case where you're exchanging labor, your work and trade instead of being paid, being unpaid. And there's some rules and things that you need to criteria. And in a lot of cases in California, a lot of yoga studios have just abandoned it. And Josh has commented on that in the post, is that many studios are no longer doing employees to do the things that typically work trade people do. So one thing is just, are you using work trade? How's it working for you? And to see is they have made any changes, because a lot of this is driven state by state. And what are the expectations, and is it possibly that you always like to talk about in the YC is your safety as a business owner and the safety of your business. So we obviously we never want to put our businesses at risk. So I just encourage people to check that out. And then also, you know, if you do have energy exchange, I hear a lot of times it's a major headache. It's a pain in the ass. Some studios that have one person that specifically that's all they do, that's their job, is to manage the karma yogis. So kind of think, just pay them, because then I also hear, oh, they didn't show up, they can't come to their shifts. There's just a lot of, almost like with teachers, of a hassle than it's worth. I'm going in and out. So I'm going to turn it over to Carol right now and maybe try to go do something with my internet. So Carol, how did you your clients?
I'm assuming you're asking about my karma cleaner energy exchange. Yeah. So it was an evolution over time. We did use karma yogis, and they had one night per week that they would clean the studio. It usually took about 2 hours to do it. And I think it just over time, we just like the expectations of our staff, we had expectations of our karma yogis. And so, we had the checklists. We had checklists ready for them. We had expectations like, if we're going to train you on this, we need you to commit for a certain amount of time. But the thing is, the majority of the people that we got to do it tended to be, well, it was people that were usually about to cancel their membership, and they would respond that it was due to finances. And so we would always reach out and say, do you have any interest in cleaning the studio in exchange? And since they were previous members, they usually ended up being like, they wanted to stay on, they were long-term people. And they were grateful for the energy exchange. Are you good?
Oh my God. This is just like, can you see me?
I can see you.
I can see you. God, this is just becoming a cluster.
Maybe if I can unmute. Okay, there, I muted Terry. Hopefully that for now, we'll figure it out. Yeah, so setting expectations, and whether with like the length of time that we needed and the duties every time. And then we had a facilities manager at our studio. And so this person was in charge of buying the waters and the toilet paper and making sure the light bulbs got changed. And then part of their responsibilities became also to manage the karma cleaners. So this person would train them on how to clean the studio. If there was ever a point at which like they were allowed to trade, just like our teachers are allowed to trade shifts. And so they could always trade with each other. If somebody didn't show up, then it was his responsibility to go in and get the studio. He didn't have to do a full clean at that point, but they did. He made sure that the studio was ready for the next day. So that's really how we took care of it, and it became really nice once I had somebody else take over, right? And actually before, it was nice as well. We had a really great team, a core group of people. Some of these people have been karma cleaners now for years. And now I live in Missouri, in the US, and I don't believe they're quite as strict as California, so we're still in a good spot with it. And the way I understood it from an insurance perspective was, as long as you had workers' comp through, we have employees at our studio, or had when I owned it, and they currently do too, but as long as you have employees and you're paying your workers' comp, should something happen to a karma yogi and they somehow can do a claim against you, then you're covered. I don't know the full, but that was what was told to me, like I think 3 or 4 years ago, on like how to cover yourself and make sure that you're for your safety as a studio owner from that perspective. So
yeah, regardless, you definitely check with your insurance company and this local authority, the state authorities, because it does vary. I guess the other thing is, I just always felt that, and maybe this is hashtag Terry's dad, that if someone's working is doing a job for you, you should pay them. Right. And then, so one thing too is is how it kind of comes back to like front desk. It's like, can I afford front desk?
mm-hmm.
Can you afford not to have front desk?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little, again, going back to that chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah.
So just when it comes to, energy exchange, whatever you want to call it, liable for your business is all that, just making sure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's and all of that good stuff. And then if it's not the case, then figure out, okay, what do I need to do with employees? And what that's going to look like for your budget and all of those good things. I mean, I know back in the beginning when I bought my studio, I was cleaning toilets, as I think a lot of us that was the thing I hated the most, was pulling the hair out of the shower treatments. To me, that I was so excited when I finally was able to pay somebody to do that. I was like, okay, I really have arrived. I don't have to pull the hair out of the shower anymore. Anyway, so the main thing is, as Carol said, just make sure that you've got it documented, whatever, and whether it's karma cleaners or paid employees, you still want to have the same SOPs. It's the checklists and all that stuff in place, and then figuring out a way to keep everybody, happy and healthy. So speaking of happy and healthy, Carol has interesting, thing to talk about today that's coming up for one of her clients. And I think it's something we all have at some point in our careers as a yoga studio owner. And it has to do with our favorite topic, staffing, human beings, right?
That's right. So it kind of goes a little bit back to last week, where we were talking about the surprising aspects of owning a yoga studio. I don't think it's surprising that you're having to manage a team. And like Terry said, like, human beings are interesting things to, interesting to work with, right? And so I have a studio owner that, well, she's opening really soon. And in this week leading up to the opening, there's already a little bit of drama between teachers. And so I know, and it's one of those, the last thing you want when you're just about to open, there's a ton of things going on. And so we just had a long discussion about like how to handle it. And, I think getting to know both sides of the equation is, you want to be as fair as possible, sit down, ask the questions, like, and don't let it fester. That's the other thing. It was like, we cannot wait to have this discussion. Like, as soon as it came up that there was some kind of friction between these people, like, we need to sit down right away and have a conversation with both of them. Just like anything else, the longer you let it fester, the worse it's going to get, and the bigger the potential blow up is. So, in this particular case, it's a matter of sort of because she's new, like, everybody's somewhat on probation anyway. So that's the good thing, that we can sort of like, I think she was very fair in saying, okay, I understand where these people are coming from, and evaluating the current situation and making sure everyone's going to be comfortable in the current situation, right? And then and I get, like I said, she's sort of in a probation with all of them anyway, so we can look forward to the potential changes that need to be made. But it was just, I think it's just surprising, I think, to a lot of people, that you're going to have to deal with some interesting personalities and friction between people, and how do you handle it? And I obviously, it just, don't let it wait. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is because I've been guilty of letting things fester because I didn't want to confront the thing. And then Carol's so right. It gets worse. And by the time you confront it, it's like blown all out of proportion. And I like what you said about a probationary period. And how long is the studio? How long is that probationary period? Is it like 3 months, or is it?
Well, she's doing, in this case, it's like 3 classes. So depending on how, the frequency of teaching, that could be different for different people. Right. And some people she knows a little bit better and she feels really confident. But for the people that she doesn't know very well, this is her way of sort of just getting a little trial run going. Because she didn't have time to like do a lot of auditions before,
And that's, particularly for a brand new studio, but even an existing studio is when you hire. I have several clients, and I think I did not do this because I was in a position, I didn't have to hire too many teachers. However, I know a lot of studios will do this. They'll have like and this is not untypical in other businesses too, is to have like a 3-month probationary period. And it's just basically kind of like that, beginning of the romance to see, is it going to work out or not? And by having it stating that it's a 3-month probationary period, then at the end of the 3 months, there's a performance evaluation, and then it's like, are you becoming a permanent employee or staying on if you're an IC or not? So it really is a good way. And you can do this not just with teachers, you can do this with any employee. You can do it with front desk staff. You can do it with, any employee or any person, not just employee, any worker in your business. You can do a probationary period and just say, hey, look, there's a 8-week or whatever it is. And then at the end of the time, there's a performance evaluation, and we look and see, is this working, and all those things. And so then if it's not, it makes it a very easy exit. Say, this just isn't working for us. We thank you, and away you go. And then you don't have to deal with the firing or terminating or anything like that. So that's a really good way to have when you bring on new staff, is to do like a probationary period. Initially too, is I was thinking, Carol, when you were talking about it too, is having, again, going back to having a really strong teacher agreement, having an agreement with essentially everybody in your organization. And it's just beyond like, here's the job description, here are the expectations, right? Here's your schedule, right? Particularly for someone like a front desk, but even the teachers. So you have that, and then they sign it. Mm-hmm. It's an actual signed document. They get a copy, you keep a copy. And then if there's an issue does come up, you have this document. Our good friend Corey Sterling talks about it all the time, is in a relationship, having an agreement with the clear expectations makes it so much easier to have the conversation when things aren't working. And when we're talking about humans, we're talking about emotions, and it helps us. It's kind of like KPIs. I can't go a Roundup without mentioning KPIs, can I? It's kind of like KPIs. It's like it helps to take the emotion out of it, right? It's like, here are the things that you were supposed to do. Here are the things you didn't do. In fact, I just had a client go through that with one of her teachers. There's certain things they're supposed to do, and this teacher was not doing them. So then the owner said, okay, it had to do with a checklist. Like, they're supposed to do this checklist and do all the things. And then she said, okay, do the checklist. And then I want you to send me a picture that you've done the checklist every time, every shift you have. And she hadn't done it. So she sat down and said, hey, you're not doing the checklist, because other teachers were coming in and saying, well, this wasn't done, and this wasn't done, and this wasn't done. So it's evident that this person was not doing the checklist. And then it got to the point where it's like, okay, this is your final warning. And it came out that this teacher just decided to self-select, which is the new word for quit. I love that, self-select, the new word for quit. However, it made the conversation much easier because of the expectations that had been established. And there were no surprises when the teacher had that conversation. So just something, it's like, people are always, again, hashtag Terry's dad. Your staff is your biggest asset and your biggest pain in the ass. Right. It's also one of the biggest line items on your P&L. So we've been doing a lot of those healthy studio things with our clients with their P&Ls, and it is the 3 biggest items on your expense are your staff pay, your pay, and your lease and utilities. It's like 70% typically of your gross revenue goes to those 3 expense categories. So making sure you've got your staff and stuff dialed in terms of all of this helps to make that expense a little more bearable. And everybody knows what's happening with that, which is a really kind of good segue into one of the top posts. It's had been posted a while back, but the nice thing about the network is people see posts and they see something and they add in, even if it's like 8 months, a year later. And so Bridget Reagan at Honey Yoga in San Diego had posted a while back about hiring. She's was hiring a studio assistant manager, essentially assistant manager, and just kind of wanted some take on, what do you look for in the hiring process? she said in her post that she was fortunate. She had some good candidates, which is nice. And then, how do you weed it down? What do you do? And what people were chiming in about that in terms of hiring is the best place to start with getting a good team is with hiring. So having hiring policies. I know we talk about this all. It's like, I just own a yoga studio. What is all up with all these SOPs and policies? Well, as I had a conversation with a client yesterday, this is a business, right? This is a business. And yes, we're in the business of yoga, but it is a business. So Carol, what were some of the things that you did around with yourself in terms of hiring? And did you do the hiring for your studio? And what was your process for hiring, whether it was teachers or desk staff or even karma yogis?
Yeah. So we did. I had a business partner, so we were always the ones doing the interviewing, which we were terrible at. Like, honestly, it's just more like, I think having a really fun question to ask, I think people do like, sell me this pencil, that kind of thing, to see how their mind works. Actually, Kay had posted, I think, as a response, like, we would ask them, like, if you have 500 envelopes to stuff and sign and send out, how would you do it? Just to see how their brain works, right? So something fun like that could be helpful in the process. Going back to not only like teacher, hiring, firing, all that kind of stuff, and who you can work with. I think especially yogis, we do a lot of like, well, I feel like this is happening, or I feel like this would be a good fit. And when I became part of the YC as a studio owner, and it was brought up, like, the people you want to hire, share the same core values, can you get along with them, and are they trainable? And like, of course, I love checklists. So instead of just feeling like this would be a right fit, if I could check off those 3 things on the list, they definitely like rose to the top. So that's how we started doing it. And it is a little bit feeling, but it is also like, do I think I can get along with this person, and do we share the same core values is like the biggest thing. Yeah, and we would just like chat and talk about the studio. And I think our best hires, well, not always, we got a lot of great people from the community itself, right?
Yeah.
So we always started with like just having flyers or posters up in studio. But you can get some good people that have no idea what you're about, and just like ingratiating yourself into that. Like, they are just they can be a really good fit outside of your organization and come in. So never just assume that it has to be somebody internal.
Yeah. And I think too, feelings do come into play, and it's called that instinctual, our gut, right? Because I've heard, like, with several clients, they were like, I kind of had this feeling and I was like, wasn't sure. And we do have, as humans, we are hardwired for certain things, and our instincts are there. And it's like, that feeling in your gut, or like you feel that curling in that's actually our tail curling under, think about like a dog. It's like we have this like instinctual tightening in our gut. And so, or maybe it's like something raised the back of my, that hair raising on the back of your neck kind of feeling. Those are there for a reason. They're actually protective, from way, way, way back in our evolution. They're protective things. So it is important, while you don't want to go always on feelings, if there's something in you that it's like, maybe they share all these things, but there's something maybe not quite, you're not 100% sure, there is nothing wrong with going with your gut. And this is where having that probationary period can come into play too. And once I had a professional HR, it was at my former company back in my corporate days. It was a big company. It was a Fortune 500 corporation. And our new HR manager came out to our facility and was just kind of talking. And he was doing a meeting. We were talking at the sales meeting. I know how this came up. But he said, in terms of HR, he said, even professionals typically do this. It's like, let's say you have however long your interview is. Let's say it's an hour. You typically will make the decision within the first 2 to 3 minutes. And then you spend the rest of the interviewing either confirming that first impression or coming up with reasons why not to. And that's why you kind of go back to, you never get another chance to make a good impression, a first impression. And so I always remember that. And it's true. Sometimes you're just like, you just have that feeling. And again, I had a conversation with a client. She's like, yeah, when I hired her, it was to do some social media, but also to do some sales. And they both were like, she's like, well, that's not really my strength. And I'm willing to give it a try. And the studio owner was like, oh. And then sure enough, she's gone now after 3 months because she just didn't like the sales portion of it. All she wanted to do was post on social media. So that's clearly a case where probably would have been, lesson learned, not a bad idea to go with your gut. And if you're hiring for a specific position or a specific task, whether it's sales, whatever it is, if that person is like, yeah, maybe I can give it a try, that might not be such a great indication. It's like, yes, I love to do that. I'm so good. That's in my wheelhouse, that type of thing. One of the things that I did when I started particularly when I started hiring front desk staff, is I had a list of questions to ask them. And to Carol's point, I had questions asked were like, tell me about the studio. And because I did have some candidates apply that were outside my community, but tell me what's on the website. How's our pricing set up? I asked questions specifically, what type of classes do we offer? I specifically asked questions to see if they'd even gone to the website, had even found out about who we were. And then I would ask questions like, okay, someone walks into the studio and they haven't bought a package. What do you sell them? And if they didn't say the intro offer, right?
Yeah.
They didn't, I was like, okay, if they didn't say the intro offer, because if they acknowledged they read the website, and I would ask this question, what would you sell them? What's the thing you're going to sell them? And if they didn't say the intro offer, I was like, okay, there's an issue there, right? And then I would ask questions like, you're at the front desk, you've got someone in front of you, the phone is ringing, how do you handle that situation? So I would ask questions about situations that they might encounter, or because we were Bikram based and hot Pilates, right, with hot studio, how would you respond if someone leaves the classroom? What would you do? Right, kind of asking them questions on things that I know would happen. I mean, that's a good question for a teacher. What do you do if, whether it's hot yoga or not, sometimes you can tell people are like about to go down. What do you do if someone, collapses in your class or falls or passes out? I've only had that happen. Carol, how many times did you ever have anybody actually pass out in your class? Well,
I'm thinking of one time I was like 8 months pregnant and I had to go over and grab a guy like was falling down. So at least one time for sure. And I was thinking that probably wasn't the best idea when I was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, I think all the years I've taught, it's only happened. Usually I could catch them and I would just say, Carol, sit down.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah.
You can kind of sit down. And I would just say that, sit down, sometimes, but if you didn't, what do you do? Asking the teacher. And here's a good one. What do you do when the teacher passes out?
Ooh.
Which happened to me.
It did.
Yeah.
Oh,
I passed out teaching one time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was a very, very interesting experience. But yes, I passed out teaching one time. Yeah. So those are all things that you can do to trust your gut. Core values. Do they align with our core values? Do they understand what our business is about? Do you like them? Or, it's like, do you like them? Do you feel that this is someone you could trust? Right? Because we want know, like, and trust. Will they fit into my culture, my business? And if everything's saying yes, they will, and that's good, then that's probably, but if something in that equation is maybe a little bit off, then if you're not 100% sure, then definitely do the trial period. And then maybe that's not the candidate.
I'd also say I always knew when it was time to let someone go when I didn't want to go into my studio. Like
Ah,
if they were working and it was like, and that I had waited too long.
yeah.
I hadn't addressed it early enough, and it just kept getting, nothing was getting better. And when I never wanted that feeling to like not want to go into my studio, but it did happen, with a few people. And so just don't wait. Again, you need to have the conversation. The weight will be lifted, even if it means you might have to either lean on your other staff a little bit more because that teacher teaches 8 classes a week, or something like that. It will work itself out and you'll be happier.
And if you do, even if you're a smaller volume studio in terms of staff, or if you're like, particularly if you have a high volume studio, if you have maybe multiple locations, a lot of teachers, there is an option. A lot of HR firms will do you can be contracted with an HR firm and hire them for like I know some businesses that use HR firms for screening of applicants and things like that. And then if helping them with certain parts of their business. So certainly, I said, even if you have a smaller staff, it does, that can be a resource for sure. And then if you have a really large staff, that might be something that you outsource, right? When we're talking about the organizational chart, who's going to be in that HR seat? Typically, it's the owner. Sometimes it might be if you have like a general manager, but if there's really then that might be a seat, like not unlike you have a CPA or you have a bookkeeper. Maybe you have an HR specialist, not unlike you have a lawyer, right? As an HR specialist to help you particularly if you're having like a thorny issue, right? Something with a staff person, and you want to make sure you're in compliance with both the state and federal laws and things like that. That's not a bad thing to have be able to have someone that really is their specialty. Because when you're getting into employment law and HR law and things like that, that's a whole, different ball of wax. So keep that in mind. Yes, it's an expense. And at the same time, it potentially could save you money down the road, right? And helping with screening and helping with thorny issues. Then one of the other things I did with my front desk, which I thought was very effective, and I know other studios do this as well, is the first interview was like a 15-minute phone interview, because I wanted to see how they were on the phone, because we did make phone calls. Even if we just got a voicemail, we left a message. So I just wanted to hear their voice, hear how they hear their personality, how they responded on the phone. Could I clearly understand them? And things of that nature. That's also just a good way to eliminate candidates, right? And then I would only interview the candidates that I felt after the phone interview. So that was another thing that was very handy and effective, I thought.
Great idea.
Yeah. So I don't know, what else?
What else? I don't know.
Summer. It's summer. It's August. Can you believe it?
I know. We're just trucking through. It's going quickly.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we hit some highlights today, and post below. What do you do? What are your hiring policies? Are you using work trade people? Is it a good thing? Do you think you might need to check out and maybe not do work trade anymore? Post your comments below. What do you do with new hires? What do you do with thorny issues and things of that nature? And we've got a great webinar coming up in 2 weeks, actually a little less, on the 22nd at noon Central Time. Vicki is going to be talking about the 5 essential things to make your free yoga weekend just off the charts. So definitely make sure that you come for that. I do believe we still have some spots for the summit. So if you're interested at all and just dialing up your business to that next level, getting everything ready for 2024, holy smokes, 2024. Message us, reach out to us. We still have some spots available. And then the other thing we have, I don't know, we've set that date. I think we have for the, yeah. So mark your calendars now. More info is going to be coming out on this on Friday, October 6th. We are going to be doing a virtual marketing calendar planning workshop. We did this last year and people loved it. At least that's what they told us. And what we'll do in that is get your marketing calendar all up and ready for 2024. So it's going to be virtual, and it's going, this year we're expanding it. The whole team's going to be involved, and it's going to be all day. And we'll take a break for lunch, but we'll have more details coming out on that as coming up as well. So there you have it. That's all the news from the YC on this, at least in Kettering, Ohio, this beautiful summer day. So again, post your comments below, reach out any questions. If you're having any issues around any of these topics we talked about and you don't have a coach, sign up for a free coaching call. We'd be happy to talk to you about any of these issues because, you know, hashtag Jerry's dad, employees, staff, biggest asset, biggest pain in the ass, and one of the biggest line items on your expense line on your P&L. So if you need some help with that, we're here to support you all. All right, have a beautiful day, everybody. And as we always say,
Go do some yoga.
bye.
Bye.
Oh. And